All right, so this is 2.3 part 1 notes. This should be a review. We're going to be dividing polynomials. So first we're going to divide polynomials using long division. So we're going to jump right into example 1. It says divide the polynomial and use the result to factor the polynomial completely. So we're going to take our divisor, put that on the outside. We have x minus 2. And then inside, we're going to put our polynomial. So 6x cubed minus 19x squared plus 16x minus 4. Now, you always want to make sure that you're not missing any terms. If I start with x to the third power, I need every degree after that. So I need an x to the second power, x to the first power, and a constant. Here we've got everything, so we're good to go. So we can jump right into dividing. Now, when we do long division, there's 3 steps that we have to follow. The first one is going to be divide. So I want to divide the first term by the first term. What's 6x to the third power divided by x? 6x squared. So we're going to write that on top. I would recommend keeping your like terms in line. So I'm going to put the 6x squared on top of the x squared term that I have because I want to keep all of my like terms in line. It'll help me stay organized for our long division. The second step is to multiply. So I'm going to multiply the 6x squared times everything out front. So 6x squared times x would be 6x to the third power. And 6x squared times negative 2 would be negative 12x squared. Now, our third step is to change the signs and combine. So what we just multiplied, I'm going to change the sign, and combine them with the terms above. So your first ones are always going to cancel because I multiplied and divided by the same numbers, so they should always cancel. Next, we have negative 19x squared plus 12x squared. This would give us negative 7x squared. Once we do these 3 steps, we repeat. So we're going to go back to step 1. We're going to divide. So what's negative 7x squared divided by x? Awesome, negative 7x. Now I'm going to put that on top of my x term. I'm going to keep my like terms in line. Step 2 is we multiply. What's negative 7x times x? Negative 7x squared, and negative 7x times negative 2 would be 14x. Now on to step 3, change the signs and combine. So everything that I just multiplied, I'm going to change the sign, and combine. So the 7x squareds are going to cancel. You can drop down the 16x. So 16x minus 14x would be 2x. What do you think we do next? After I change the signs and combine, what do? We're going to divide it again. So we've got to divide again. What's 2x divided by x? 2. Then we multiply. 2 times x minus 2. 2 times x would be 2x. And 2 times negative 2 would be negative 4. What's next? Change the signs and combine. So I'm going to drop down the negative 4. 2 x's are going to cancel. What's negative 4 plus 4? 0. So our remainder is 0. Now, when you divide and you get a remainder of 0, that means whatever you divided into it, your divisor, is going to be a factor. Like if I were to divide 10 by 2, I would have no remainder when I do that. That means 2 would be a factor. If I divided 11 by 2, would I get a remainder? Like If I divided the number 11 by 2, would we get a remainder? Yeah, so 2 wouldn't be a factor of 11. So if it divides in evenly, it's a factor. So this question asks to use the result to factor the polynomial completely. I'm going to make a list of my factors. On WebAssign, it's going to want all of the factors. So what we divided into it is going to be our first factor. Since it divided evenly, I'm going to put that as our first factor here, x minus 2. Next, I'm going to take the answer that I just found, and I'm going to factor this. So I'm going to rewrite it here so we have a little bit more space. 6x squared minus 7x plus 2. And we're going to factor this to find our remaining factors. How would I factor this? What do we do? Awesome. We always want to multiply the first times the last when our leading coefficient's not 1. So we got 12. Our two factors of 12 that add to negative 7 would be negative 4 and negative 3. So we have x minus 4 and x minus 3. What do we have to do next? If we start by multiplying, what do we have to remember to do? If you start by multiplying, you have to divide by the leading coefficients. We're going to divide by 6. Always, always, always simplify your fractions if you can. So my first one, I can divide the top and the bottom by 2. We get 2 over 3. What do I do with the denominator if it doesn't simplify anymore? We put it in front of that x. So this would be 3x minus 2. My second fraction, we can divide them both by 3. So this would be 1 over 2. So if we can't simplify anymore, we move the denominator in front of the x. So this would be 2x minus 1. Now you can check your work by foiling this out. You'll end up with the original polynomial. If I were to at least check your work by foiling the first. So you don't have to foil it out all the way if you don't want to check your work 100%. But I would recommend multiplying your first together. See if that gives you the first term in your question that we factored. If I multiplied 3x times 2x, that would give me 6x. So that's one way to check your work really quick just to make sure, okay, I at least did like the first step right. Some people forget to simplify the fractions and they just move the 6 in front of the x and the 6 in front of the x. But then if I were to FOIL that out, I'd have 6x times 6x, which would be 36x squared. So then you did something wrong. You didn't simplify. So always just lightly check your work by multiplying the first together. Now these are my other two factors, so I'm going to add them to my list here. So we have 3x minus 2 and 2x minus 1. So these are our factors. For questions like this on WebAssign, it's going to want you to list all of your factors. So not just like the two answers that you found, but also the factor that it gave you in the beginning. If it divides in evenly, it's a factor. So make sure you include that on your list of factors. So looking back at our long division here, I've got my x cubes in line. I've got all of my x squareds in a line. I've got all of my x's in a line and all of my constants in a line. It's helpful to do this so you're organized, so you know what's going to come next. Let's look at number 2 on the next page. So here we're going to practice long division again. Outside the box, we've got x minus 8. Inside, we need to be careful here. Are we missing any terms? I've got an x squared, but I'm missing an x. So in that spot, I'm going to put a 0x. So we have x squared plus 0x minus 74. Now you want to include that 0x as a placeholder. If you just want to leave it as 0, that's okay. You don't need the x there, but it just helps so you know this is going to be my x column. So I like to leave the x there so I know that's going to be my x column. So what's the first step when we do long division? Divide. X squared divided by x is x. Step 2, multiply. So x times everything out front. X times x would be x squared. X times negative 8 would be negative 8x. Step 3, Change the signs and combine. Change signs and combine. So change the sign, and combine them together. So x squared minus x squared is going to cancel. Your first ones are always going to cancel. 0x plus 8x is going to be 8x. Then we do it all again. Step 1, we divide. What's 8x divided by x? 8, so plus 8. Step 2, we multiply. What's 8 times x? 8x, and 8 times negative 8? Negative 64. What do we do next? Change the signs and combine. So the 8x's cancel. I'm going to combine the 64 with negative 74. So negative 74 plus 64 would be negative 10. Now, I already wrote my constant. So this negative 10, I ran out of terms here. This negative 10 is going to be my remainder. So when you already have your constant there, whatever is going to be left over is your remainder. Now you can write your answer as x plus 8 remainder negative 10. This would work on a test or quiz. This is perfectly fine. You can leave it as the remainder there. WebAssign is going to want you to write it as x plus 8. And then our remainder is going to be written as a fraction. So because it's negative, I'm going to say minus 10 over whatever our divisor was. So x minus 8 is going to go in the denominator there. So this is how WebAssign is going to want it. If you saw this on like an SAT or something like that, it'd probably have it written as a fraction too. It probably wouldn't have remainder negative 10, even though I've seen it both ways on the SAT. But just know that these mean the same thing. But WebAssign, you're going to have to type it in as a fraction. So at the bottom of the next page, it says, if the remainder is 0, then it divides unevenly into our function. So if the remainder is 0, then it's a factor. So just like we did in the first example, when it divided unevenly, we got a remainder of 0, then that term is going to be a factor of our polynomial. All right, so the next thing that goes along with long division is our favorite shortcut, synthetic division. So you guys have to know how to do it both ways. On the test and quiz, I'll have a question specifically asking you to do long division, and I'll have another question specifically asking you to do synthetic division. So you make sure you know how to do it both ways. But I know synthetic division people enjoy so much more because it is like a shortcut. So when we do synthetic division, what we're dividing into it, our divisor, is going to go on the outside. But we have to be careful because we always want to change the sign of the number that's going to go on the outside. So here it says x minus k, positive k would go on the outside. The reason being, if I were to solve x minus k and found what x is equal to, we'd get x equals k, because we'd add the k to move it to the other side. If I had x plus 6, if I were to solve this, I would get x equals negative 6. So we always change the sign when it's written as like x plus or x minus. And then the coefficients are going to go inside the box. Just like before, make sure every term is represented. If I start with x to the third power, I need x to the second, x to the first power, and our constant. So the coefficients go inside the box. So let's look at the first example on the next page. What's going to go outside the box? What would x equal? If we have x plus 3, what does x equal? Negative 3. So negative 3 goes outside the box. You always want to change your sign. Inside the box, we're going to put our coefficients, but we have to be careful because we need every term represented. If I start with x to the fourth power, what am I missing here? X to the third power. So in that spot, I'm going to put a 0 x to the third power. So when I put my coefficients in the box, just the coefficients, we've got 1, 0, -10, -2, and 4. So you want to make sure you put the coefficients in order and don't skip any terms. Here our polynomial is missing that x to the third power, so I have to put a 0 in that spot. Now the first thing we want to do with synthetic division, once we set it up, is we're going to drop down the first number. Outside of the box, we multiply. So I have -3 times 1 would be -3. Inside the box, we add. So 0 plus -3 would be -3. Outside we multiply. -3 times -3 would be 9. Inside the box we add. -10 plus 9 is -1. Outside we multiply. -3 times -1 is +3. Inside we add. -2 plus 3 would be 1. Outside multiply. -3 times 1 is -3. Inside we add, we get 1. Now our answer here is the coefficients of your actual answer. So what we want to do is put the variable parts with it. We always start our answer with 1 degree less than what the question started with. So if I start with x to the 4th power, my answer is going to be 1 less than that. So x to the 3rd power. Then minus 3x to the 2nd power, we just decrease from there. Minus x plus 1. The very last number is going to be your remainder. So when I write my answer, it would be x to the 3rd power minus 3x squared minus x plus 1, remainder 1. This would work on a test or quiz, but remember on WebAssign, it's going to want it as a fraction. I'm going to say, or we would write our answer as x to the 3rd power minus 3x squared minus x plus 1. And then since it's a positive remainder, I'm going to say plus the remainder over the divisor x plus 3. So this would be how WebAssign wants it. Either way would work on a test or quiz. You could leave it whatever way you like to. Make sure you leave it as a fraction on WebAssign. All right, let's do number 2. What's going to go outside the box here? Awesome. If I were to make this x equals, x would equal 8. So 8 is going to go outside the box. Inside the box, are we missing any terms? Nope. So we have 1, -7, -11. So I'm going to drop down the 1. Outside we multiply. 8 times 1 is 8. Inside the box we add. -7 plus 8 is 1. 8 times 1, 8. -11 plus 8, -3. So if our question started with x to the 2nd power, what does our answer have to start with? X. So we have 1x plus 1. The very last number is our remainder. So I would write this as x plus 1, remainder -3. Or if this was WebAssign, it'd want it as x plus 1. Since it's a negative remainder, I'm going to say minus 3 over whatever our divisor was, which was x minus 8. So next page, we're going to talk about the remainder theorem. We use the remainder theorem to evaluate at a given number. So it'll give us like x equals 2, and it'll say evaluate. Now the remainder theorem is kind of like a shortcut, so we don't have to plug in 2 into all of our x's. We're going to use synthetic division to help us evaluate. So synthetic division can be used to evaluate. When you use the remainder theorem, if the question says, use the remainder theorem to evaluate, your answer is going to be the remainder. Let's look at example 5. So we're going to do this the same way. We're going to use synthetic division, but the remainder is going to be our answer. So it says, use the remainder theorem to evaluate. One way you can evaluate this is take -2, plug it into all of your x's. Using the remainder theorem is supposed to be a shortcut to not have to do that. So I'm going to draw my box. What's going to go outside the box here? -2, perfect. Here it says x equals -2. So if it gives you x equals already, you plug in exactly what it says. -2 is going to go outside the box. Inside the box, are we missing any terms? No. So we can just put our coefficients. 3, 8, 5, -7. So I'm going to drop down the 3. Multiply on the outside. -2 times 3 is -6. Add on the inside. 8 minus 6 is 2. Multiply on the outside. -2 times 2 would be -4. Add on the inside. We get 1. Multiply on the outside. -2. Add on the inside. -9. What would our answer be here? -9. Just the remainder is our answer. So just the remainder. This question's asking me to find f of -2. So f of -2 would just be -9. Just the remainder is your answer. Let's do example 2. What's going to go on the outside? 1, perfect. It already gave me k equals 1, so I don't want to change the sign here. What goes on the inside? 1, -7, and 10. Perfect. So we're going to drop down the first number, multiply on the outside. 1 times 1 would be 1. Add on the inside. -7 plus 1 is -6. Multiply the outside. 1 times -6 would be -6. Add on the inside. 10 minus 6 would be 4. So f of 1 would equal 4. Just the remainder is our answer. So this question's asking us the same thing. Use the remainder theorem to evaluate. Just the remainder is your answer. All right, lastly, let's do 3. What's going to go on the outside here? 5, perfect. It says a equals 5. It's exactly what it says. It goes on the outside. What goes on the inside? Perfect. I'm missing just a. I start with a to the second power, so I got to put a 0 in that spot. So 1, 0, -28. I'm going to drop down the 1, multiply on the outside. We get 5. Add on the inside, 5. Multiply. 5 times 5 is 25, and 25 minus 28, -3. What's our answer here? -3, just the remainder. So f of 5, because we plugged 5 into the x's or the a's, would equal -3. With the WebAssign, it's kind of particular about how it wants the answers typed in, especially for like the dividing when it says like write the factors. Doesn't really specify with the directions, but remember you could always say try another, see how it wants the answers typed out, and then do it with the question.